Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. Sufism may evoke the images of whirling dervishes or the sublime poetry of Sufi poets such as Rumi and Hafiz. But most people are not aware of its practices, beliefs, and spiritual ethics. Called the path of the heart, Sufism provides a compendium of wisdom that's both profound and practical. In this interview, we'll explore the richness of this tradition with my guest, Ayeda Husain. Ayeda Husain is a senior teacher and guide in the Inayatiyya, a global organization dedicated to Universal Sufism. A longtime journalist specializing in Sufism, she now teaches Sufi meditation, chanting, and philosophy with a special emphasis on Rumi poetry as a means of healing and evolving. She has led spiritual retreats worldwide, taught Sufi meditation to Buddhist monks in Tokyo, and been invited to the UN as a part of an international delegation of spiritual leaders. In this interview, Ayeda will introduce us to the mystical world of Sufism. We'll discuss the main teachings and practices and how we can use them to navigate our day-to-day lives more effectively, including the use of her new tarot deck, the Sufi Tarot. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks. Hi, Ayeda. It's so nice to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm well, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here with us. I'm so looking forward to talking about the mystical beliefs and practices of Sufism, which is the inspiration behind your new tarot deck, the Sufi Tarot. I don't have the deck yet, but I've seen the images and the interpretations of the cards, and I have to say that the cards are simply enchanting.
Thank you. Thank you. It was such a labor of love for me, and I'm not an artist, I'm a writer. And for me to work with two young artists in Pakistan on Zoom, I would meditate, these images would come to me, and then I would try to explain to them on Zoom what to do and try to bug them as much as I could to make the images as close to as what I had seen. It took a lot of do-overs, but it turned out okay, I think.
Definitely worth it because, the images are just so evocative and so, it really captures the spirit of each tarot card. But we'll talk more about your tarot deck later on. But for now, let's get to know you more, Ayeda. Tell us about your background and the role that Sufism has played in your life.
So I'm from Pakistan originally. I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for a long, long time. I was studying in New York in the 80s, late 80s, and I met my Sufi teacher who was back home in Pakistan. And I was not quite ready to go as deep as I should have gone, but there was some seed which was planted, and that continued to grow. I was in art school in New York, got the bachelor's, changed my major completely, went into Middle Eastern studies and journalism, so I could go deeper into Sufism academically. And when I was ready to bring together my academic interest, my love for the practices, my love for the healing, my love for the art, my love for everything, he had passed on. So I started looking, and I found, before I found my teacher, I gave up basically. And when I gave up, then I was led to my teacher, and this was about 18 years ago. So the order that I belong to now is the Chishti order. It's called the Inayatiyya order. The grandfather of my teacher, the man who brought Sufism to the West in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And what I love about belonging to this order is the universalism. It's very open to, it's not exclusive, it's inclusive, which is the spirit of Sufism. So what I loved about Sufism is that I could bring everything together on this path. I could bring together my academic interest, my love for the practices, my art background, my writing background, and put everything together into this wonderful mystical path, which is so open, so accepting, and so honoring of everything in our lives.
Okay, that's beautiful. So you didn't grow up being a Sufi. It's something you discovered along the way.
Yes, so Sufism is not a sect. It's really a mystical path. It's not something that you're born into. It's something you choose to discover on your own. So I know some people are born into Sufi families, but I think it's because it's a journey. It's something one really takes part of as a conscious choice. So yes, I discovered it at the age of 19, and then it became deeper and deeper with time. I've been
Okay.
teaching for the last 18 years. I've been running Sufi centers in different countries that I've lived in, and it's very much a part of my journey because it helps transitions between different parts of your life. A Sufi once said that there's no such thing as a crisis. A crisis is simply a transition not understood or handled correctly. So it's been a wonderful, I don't want to use the word tool. It's been a wonderful support system across different transitions in my own life.
So you say Sufism is a pathway, but from what I read, it's been described as a mystical religion. Could you clarify, like, what exactly is it? Because I'm sure there are people out there who are confused about that.
Right. So Sufism is, first of all, not a religion. Sufism is the mystical path of Islam. So every religion has a mystical path. You have the monks in Christianity, you've got the Kabbalah in Judaism, you've got the sadhus in Hinduism. So in Islam, we have the Sufis. But what makes Sufism different from other mysticisms, other mystical paths, is that we're not renouncing the world. It's a very, very strong emphasis of being in the world, but not of the world. So we go deeper and deeper into our own hearts until we realize that our heart is really the heart of the universe and the heart of God. And there is really only one being, which is Wahdat al-Wujud. So the order that I belong to is universal. And we believe very strongly that even though Sufism was formalized in the tradition of Islam, it's pre-existed all religions. It's the heart of Islam, but it's actually the heart of every religion. Because if you believe in the oneness of all being, then all religions are dated back to some year. But Sufism has predated existence as we know it. In Sufism, we believe in the sound of Hu. In Hinduism, we have the sound of Om.
Yeah.
We have the sound of Hu. It's very much the same vibration. And we believe that this is a sound that existed before creation. And when we pass on, this is the sound we will connect to, and the sound will take us wherever we're meant to go. So, yes, it was formalized in the Islamic tradition, but it has predated any man made religion and will hopefully overflow the confines of any man-made or any man-made parameters.
Yeah, and I think poets like Rumi and Hafiz are really popularized it, because honestly, that was my first exposure to Sufism, reading Rumi, and I think a lot of people, their first exposure to Sufism is through them.
Well, Rumi is such an incredible poet to read. If you look at his life, he had his heart shattered. Before he had his heart shattered, he was a scholar and a bit of a dry theologian. And then he met this wild teacher, Shams. And Shams transformed him and then disappeared. And then after he disappeared, Rumi turned into somebody totally different from who he was before. He was no longer a rigid academic. He found the heart quality after having the heart being broken. And that is what, even 800 years after his passing, makes him so relatable. What happens? What happens through the pains and traumas of life? Do you remain stuck in it? Or do you do what Rumi did? Do you use it to transform yourself and start becoming an empty receptacle for something else which is flowing through you? The
Mm.
first poem in his Masnavi, it's a collection of 25,000 couplets, speaks about the reed flute. And he says, learn to be like the reed flute. The reed flute was just a reed growing among many reeds, and it was cut, taken away from its place of origin, chopped up into pieces, had holes drilled into it, had the inside scooped out, was thrown in the oven. But now this reed flute is empty because it allowed the fire to burn it and to empty it. And because of that, it makes these exquisite sounds that you are moved by the sound of the reed flute because it's empty. So learn to be emptied out, because through that emptiness, you will be able to achieve more than you could with your full of yourself self.
So profound. So simple, yet so profound.
And that's what makes Rumi's poetry so relatable, because he
Yeah.
takes little simple analogies like the reed flute or the
Yeah.
chickpea or an animal, and he takes them to a different level and allows you to start questioning yourself and your own involvement.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Aida. Tell us about the main tenets of Sufism, because I believe there are three of them, and that they're actually called the threefold process of the Sufi path. So, could you please break that down for us?
Yes, so Sufism is really a path of purification. You're trying to purify your soul. Like Rumi said, polish the mirror of your heart, you can see the divine. And there are many different methods of going about it. The main ones that Sufis speak about are Sharia, Tariqa, and Hakika. That you begin with the Sharia, which is the outer law. How to purify yourself through your diet, through your hygiene, outer laws, basically, which keep you purified. Then there's the tariqat, which is the inner path. And that is when you join a mystical school. Sufi schools are called tariqas, which is a way, a method of going deeper on the path. So there's the highway, which is for everyone, and then there's the path, the tariqa, which is not for everyone. You've already decided that you want to more than just outward rituals. You want to go deeper into the symbolism and understand what it teaches you about yourself. And then the third state, which you hopefully eventually arrive at, is hakika, which is the truth. We're trying to arrive at the truth. Sufis believe that there are different ways of learning. So you can hear about something like fire. Yes, we've heard it's red, it's hot. Then you can read about it, and then you can read more descriptions about what it feels like to be burnt and the qualities of fire. Or the third method, which is what Sufis like, is to experience the fire, to really put your hand in and get a little bit burnt, to understand the experiential aspect, because hearing and reading can only get you so far. The real knowledge is the knowledge of the heart, and that is what we're trying to access through Sufism.
Yeah, and one of the ways that you do that is through dancing and chanting and singing. And it seems to play a really key role in Sufi practice. So, can you tell us why that's the case?
Yes, sacred music, and sacred movement are very much a part of my tariqa, my Sufi order, but it's important to differentiate that there are many different orders. Some of them don't have music or movement at all. The one that I belong to, the Chishti Silsila, is from South Asia. Then we've got the Turkish Mevlevi that is also very tied into music and movement. And we call it Sama, which comes from the divine names al-sami, which means the hearer, the listener. So sama means deep listening. And when you approach sacred music or sacred movement, it's not a form of entertainment. You're really allowing the vibrations to flow through you and change you and transform you. And what music does, especially mystical music of all traditions, is that it bypasses the critical faculties of the mind. So, especially for people who are challenged by stilling their mind, who have a hard time controlling what we call the monkey mind, music really, really helps still it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love music, so I can attest to that.
And then if you want to go into more aggressive form of stilling the mind, we have the movement of the whirling dervishes.
The whirling dervish, yeah, yeah. And that is from where exactly?
As we know it today, it comes from Turkey, Konya. Yes. There's a wonderful story behind it. Rumi, after the loss of Shams, was walking through the streets of Konya, heartbroken, and he heard a coppersmith hitting the pots and pans in front of him with a hammer, and he closed his eyes. He put one hand up and one hand down like this. Then he just started whirling. And while he would whirl, he would say things, and his students wrote those things down. And that's what we know as Rumi's poetry today. So it's a form of, it's not really a dance, it's a form of worship.
Is it a meditation? Like, are they chanting? Are they, it seems like they're in a trance when they're doing the dance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they're not singing, but there's usually either somebody else singing or chanting for them. And they go into this state of emptiness, of non-existence. I met a whirling dervish who told me that every time I whirl, every time I turn, I'm transformed. And I go home and my wife says, "Who are you?" Because it changes. You're not just turning around for fun, you're turning yourself around. You're removing yourself from the center of the universe and putting the divine there. And when you learn to experience life without your ego, everything changes. So that is what all our Sufi practices, the music, the movement, the chanting, the meditation.
And you're a singer, right? You actually sing.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, yeah.
I am. And the first song I ever recorded was actually Rumi's Song of the Reed, in which he talks about the reed flute and what it represents in our own journey, allowing ourselves to be emptied by life. So you're no longer just like a lifeless piece of wood, but by being hollowed out, you can let this divine breath flow through you. So it's in Persian, but I learned a little bit just to be able to sing it in its original, authentic form.
Wow. So this is one way to heal yourself, right? Singing and dancing. Are there other ways that Sufism do the teachings like that support your growth and also help you in your healing?
Absolutely. So we have breath work. Breath work is really something, they say the first and the last lesson on the Sufi path is your breathing. So we have the breath work, we have chanting, we have meditation, we have the subtle centers, which are like the lataif, which are called the lataif, but they're like the chakras, and we're trying to activate and awaken them. The chakras are in a straight line that go up. The lataif are actually not. It's a straight line, and then there's also a horizontal line. So we have the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, and it represents your connection with the divine, as well as the connection with the world, and it's bringing them together. Another reason that our chakras or the lataif are not linear is that we believe that the spiritual path is never linear. The journey is never linear. It's more of a spiral. So you go around, you end up in the heart of the hearts, in the center, and then you begin again. So we don't reach this place of fana, which I guess you can describe as nirvana, and stay up there. Oh no, you're humbled again right away. And then you need to begin the learning process. And it's constant, it's continual, and it goes on and on for as long as we live.
What are called? Do they have a certain name? So if people want to find out more about these modalities, what should they be searching for?
One can have a very general Google search on Sufi healing, but if you want the specifics, my Sufi order has a web page called Inayatiyya.org, and they have a section which tells you exactly what to do with these healing modalities and how to use them. So as I was saying, there's breath work, there's chanting, there is meditation, there are the subtle centers, and then we have other contemplative methods of tracing an impulse back and clearing impressions, muhasaba and muraqaba. And then we have a thing called sohbat, which I think people love the best because it just means that you can just sit with a very, very evolved human being like your teacher, and through their energy, you will be healed. I like to think of Sufism as more of a conscious journey of evolution rather than just wanting someone to have a magic wand and transform and heal you. But without a doubt, these great beings have these incredible powers of balancing and transforming and changing you with just one glance or one encounter. Sufism, interestingly, is not a verb, it's not a noun, it's a verb. So it's a process of becoming. It comes from the Arabic word tasawwuf, which is a process of purifying. So it's a constant journey. And it's very hard. I think the most evolved Sufis will never ever call themselves Sufis. They say we are on the Sufi path because nobody's ever fully there. We're all just walking together to a similar destination.
And you were able to channel all your knowledge on Sufism into this beautiful tarot deck that you created, the Sufi Tarot. How were you able to do that, Ayeda?
Let me tell you the real story. The real story. The real story. I had a broken
As opposed
arm.
to the glamorized one?
As opposed to the glamorized one. I had a broken arm, a crushed arm. We were in the middle of the pandemic. It was a lockdown. I couldn't go out anywhere.
I remember that. Yes, I think we all do.
I just started meditating. And I found this old, beautiful Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, the back of this bookshelf, actually. And I started shuffling with one hand. And I loved the way the images spoke to me, but I felt very unrepresented by them. It was very Eurocentric. The images were, again, so powerful, but they did not represent me. So I started researching a little bit. Again, it was funny because I would do the Google searches with my left hand. And I learned that tarot came from Egypt. And it was picked up by the Italians and it took on a more medieval Christian flavor during the Renaissance. And a lot of the aspects already existed. They were just modified and adapted. And I thought, wow, what a beautiful way to bring together the East and the West. And what if there was a tarot deck which honored both? It honored the Eastern Islamic Egyptian origins as well as the development and the evolution in Europe. And so we had first the Italian deck, then we had the French Marseille deck, and then the British Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So it just really took off. But this is the foundation. What if I could actually bring everything together? So I started searching into my 34 years of experience, academic and experiential and teaching, and just put together everything. I spent 4 years at art school in New York. All my art sense, whatever little I learned, everything I put into this project because it was such a powerful way for me to bring together two traditions which are viewed as being so distinct, and yet they're not. They're so similar. The healing, the journey of the fool. Rumi has a poem called The Fool's Journey. It's all about the young soul in search of truth. And that's what the journey of tarot is. And that's what the journey of the Sufi path. It's a path. You're on a journey. It never ends. Until you're alive, you're constantly traversing these terrains. And sometimes they are totally unfamiliar. we have the fool over here.
Yeah. So is it like the hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey?
Very much so. But it's called the fool's journey, and I had an issue with the word fool because it showed that the person is foolish. It doesn't mean that he or she is foolish. They're young and they're naive and they're open-hearted and they want to learn what's out there, and they're in this perfect state of what we call tawakkul, of just pure belief and faith that I will be taken care of. So that is the journey of the so-called fool in tarot, and that is the journey of the person on the Sufi path, on the mystical path, that, okay, I don't know what's there, but I really am being called, and I need to start walking. And I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And I love the confluence, the similarities between these two traditions, which I hope I've been able to bring together.
Were you able to do that by yourself, or did you need to consult experts in, Egyptian mythology or anything like that?
One of the cards is the magician card. I wanted to call him the alchemist. I don't know where he is, but I wanted to show a scholar sitting on a table with all these books, and through the power of his mind, he's making the papers fly up. But to dress him up as a scholar, there are different turbans which people wear. There is the cleric's turban, and then there's the scholar's turban. So I did a lot of research to make sure that everything which was represented visually was not a culturally, was not cultural appropriation, and B, that it was appropriate. I'm not going to have an academic dressed up as a cleric. So there was a lot of research which was involved. I'm really lucky. I have some wonderful friends who are academics and professors. I would run things by them the whole time. This is the Rumi quote: "Is this authentic? Can you give me the source?" Many of the things we see today on the internet are just made up, especially Hafiz. A lot of things have been made up. It was important for me that whatever I wrote and put out there stand the test to either a layman or the most sophisticated academic. There's nothing in there which is inappropriate or inaccurate. So there was a lot of research involved.
Yeah, I think it's so important to be sensitive to these traditions and avoid cultural appropriation, because that is happening quite a lot these days. And I think it's because of the fact that you are a global citizen. You've lived in a lot of places. So I think that's really, really important. And speaking of confluence of traditions, I read that you actually taught meditation to Buddhist monks in Japan. So yes. What was that like? That was really surprising to see that they're actually open to learning other traditions and other forms of meditation. What was that experience like for you?
I belong to this UN group called the Global Peace Initiative of Women. And what we do is we bring together female spiritual leaders as opposed to male, because there have not been many female leaders. And this was one invitation I was extended through them, in which I was in Tokyo teaching Buddhist monks Sufi meditation. And it was very interesting because I was sitting on a stage with a big golden reclining Buddha behind me, and these monks who were sitting before me had the most perfect posture I've ever seen. And here I am telling them to sit straight. It was a bit humbling. But I picked a meditation which I thought would speak to them, because there's a lot of ancestor reverence in their tradition. So I picked a Sufi meditation which you visualize a master, saint, or prophet, or a guide. And then you extend a white light, rope of light from your heart to their heart, and then to a subtle presence beyond them, and then to a subtle presence beyond them. And eventually that white rope of light goes to the divine. And I do not use the word God. I'm very cautious because people have different words that they use in their own traditions. I use the word divine. And so many of them came up to me, said that they could relate to their Sufi practice. They were amazed at how similar it was to what they did in their own tradition. So it was incredible. And also we used the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether as a way of healing our breath. That's another practice I shared with them. And they loved it because that's something they have in their tradition as well, the elements. So it's incredible when we try to look for similarities rather than differences, how many
I
more
know
there
if
are.
we can do that, there would be so much more peace and understanding and cooperation if we can find those commonalities in our belief systems. And
They're there.
you should write a book on that because you seem to have
I
done it
should.
successfully. Yeah, that's a very valuable skill set. All right, Ayeda, it's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. The great work that you're doing. I love your podcast. I love your blog.
So much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very quickly, I just want to let everyone know if you're interested in purchasing or learning more about Ayeda's new deck, the Sufi Tarot, you can visit thesufittarot.com. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Ayeda?
No, I hope it answers all your questions, and we're all on a journey. So may it be easy and may it be love.
Yeah, and thank you for being part of our journey on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. You have a beautiful rest of your day.
I will, and you too.
Thank you. Bye.